And you are live.
Good morning and welcome to House Education on Wednesday, April 23, 2025. So committee, as we continue to discuss phone-free schools, we thought it would be a good idea to revisit H54 and kind of walk through it again and get a sense of what it does and what it doesn't. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Legislative Council to give us a walkthrough.
Good morning, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we have H54 as introduced, an act relating to cell phone free schools, and it begins with some findings. Do you want to walk through the findings?
I don't think so.
So we are.
Unless anybody would like to walk through the findings. They're all there. You can read them.
Then we are going to move to page 4, line 10. We're still in section 1, the findings and intent section, but there is a piece of legislative intent here. And it reads, it is the intent of the General Assembly for all students in Vermont to access the benefits of a phone and social media free school environment, which promotes focus, improved mental health, and increased social integration. And then section 2 adds a subchapter to chapter 9, which is your school district chapter in Title 16. The new subchapter would be cell phone and personal electronic device use in schools. That would be the title of it. And then it begins with a definition section. So it defines for this subchapter, meaning unless someone were to specifically say as used in this section, these definitions are only applying in this subchapter. So cell phone means any device capable of using cellular technology to facilitate voice service through a commercial telecommunications company, regardless of whether the device can access internet services and electronic mail. I'm on page 5 now. Electronic device means any device that transmits sounds, images, text, messages, videos, or electronic information, electronically records, plays, or stores information, or accesses the internet or private communication or information networks. Parent is defined as a parent of a student and includes legal guardians who are legally authorized to make education decisions for the student.
Can I just interrupt for a second? So the sort of cell phone and electronic device definitions, were they drawn from other places?
Yes, but I don't remember off the top of my head where they were drawn from.
Can we pause for questions then
yeah.
about that? So the electronic device definition seems incredibly broad to ban a whole bunch of useful tools that we use every day, including CD players and tape recorders and any keychain that makes a sound. And I'm not sure what to do about that.
Well, good point. This is all sounding familiar, like we've had this conversation before.
Right, sorry.
Deja vu.
No, but it's a good refresher. So what was the other end of that conversation?
Yeah.
What do you mean the other end?
Well, I guess,
The answer.
why are we defining electronic device or
So I do have references not with me as to where there was a definition pulled from a bill that's moving or has moved its way through or sitting somewhere in the federal government in
Yes.
Congress.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was electronic device or cell phone. So I don't want to speak out of turn. So I'll look that up at my little desk here and get back to you.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So are we talking about personal
Yes.
electronic devices? So if a teacher brought these things in, that's covered?
Well, probably we'll ask that at the end.
Okay.
Go through this.
But the policy choice of what's included in electronic device or not is just that, it's a policy choice. This is, you all get to decide what's covered under this bill and what's not. This is just the bill as introduced, so it would be the sponsor's intent
Okay.
here.
And I would just remind everybody that this is devices that would be sort of tucked away from bell to bell.
Personal devices, right?
Mhm.
So school is also going to include, so it's going to include any public school, independent school, CTE, or pre-qualified private kindergarten provider located in Vermont. Social media is defined as a website or internet medium that permits a person to become a registered user, establish an account, or create a profile for the purpose of allowing users to create, share, and view user-generated content through such an account or profile. Enables one or more users to generate content that can be viewed by other users with the medium, and primarily serves as a medium for users to interact with content generated by other users of the medium. Student is defined as an individual currently enrolled or registered at a school located in Vermont, and that school, we're going to refer back up to that definition in subdivision 4. So public, independent, CTE, or pre-qualified pre-K, private pre-K provider. We don't need to spell out public pre-K because they would be looped into public schools. And that's those are all the definitions. So then on page 6, we move into the second new section in your new subchapter entitled Personal Electronic Devices. Policy requirement. Each school board or governing body of an independent school or pre-qualified private pre-K provider shall develop, adopt, and ensure implementation of, and make available in the manner described under subdivision 563, subdivision 1 of this title. That subdivision 1 is about school board policy. A policy to prohibit student use of cell phones and personal electronic devices at school from arrival to dismissal. The policy may prohibit a student from bringing a personal electronic device to school, require personal electronic devices to be placed in a designated area on school property, or allow for utilization of a product that functions to secure the personal electronic device, such as a device locker or lockable pouch. So every school district, so every school has to have a policy that prohibits use of cell phones between arrival and dismissal. And then that policy may get more specific. It may say you can't bring them to school at all. It may require that the electronic devices are placed somewhere on school property, or they may allow for some sort of device locker or lockable pouch. Exceptions. The policy shall provide an exception for students to possess and use a cell phone or personal electronic device if a licensed physician or licensed advanced practice registered nurse determines such possession or use is necessary for the health of the student. The school may require documentation to support an exception under this subdivision. So I would just draw your attention to the types of licenses that would be accepted on that form or that written documentation. So, not a therapist.
Right.
Special educator.
Right, not included here. It's a licensed physician or an APRN.
It could be mental.
I think
Especially their mental
got
health.
hitting the diabetes question. Yeah, right.
Right.
Blood sugar
That's
monitor.
right.
Well, for the personal electronic device, something is gonna be more mental health. They have to like have music playing or.
Well, we get into in
Sound.
subdivision 2. There's an exception. So the policy shall also provide an exception for students to possess and use a cell phone or personal electronic device if it is a part of an IEP or a 504 plan, and that use has to be documented according to applicable state and federal law. So it has to be a part of their plan. Page 7, new section in your new subchapter, prohibition of integration of social media platforms into education. Schools, school districts, and supervisory unions are prohibited from utilizing social media for communication with students directly, and asking, requiring, or permitting students' use of social media for school activities, out of school academic work, homework, school sports, or extracurricular clubs and any other school-sponsored activities. Schools shall have in place measures to prevent students from accessing social media while on school-issued electronic devices and while under the supervision of the school. The findings would take effect on July 1, 2025. And then the policy requirement and the section regarding social media use. Actually, the rest of it, all of section 2, subchapter 7 in its entirety. So the definitions, the policy, the social media sections would all take effect on December 1, 2025.
Thinking about schools, it seems to me that it would be very difficult to implement this halfway through a school year, and that's what this timeline does. It seems like the best time to implement new cell phone rules would be at the beginning of a school year. So I wonder if we're not gonna pass this year, if both should take place on July 1st, 2026, or if we can do this, if that second date should be July 1st, 2026 as well, or August 1st, 2026. But it's incredibly difficult to start off with one set of rules and then expect kids to switch to another partway through the year.
Yeah, and I think right now is a good time for us to sort of collect questions such as that one that we want to address.
I red flagged this earlier when we went through an introduction, this at the beginning of the session, but in section 2 of this, line 5 there, page 7, asking, requiring, or permitting students use of social media for activities, out of school academic work. To me, there's a little bit of gray area in the permitting students too, because if students decide on their own to create a group on social media, how does the school have to interact? Like a school on Facebook or whatever, Instagram for sports, right? The permitting part to me sounds a little clunky to.
Yeah, because kids' teams are probably gonna do that. I've seen it.
Right, and how is that?
As long as it's.
How does that interact with this policy about permitting students to do that?
So if I were to try to interpret the intention here is to say that, the sort of out of school groupings that might be informal coming together, you can't control. But to say, the coach says to the captain of the team, put together an Instagram so we can all communicate or whatever. I think that's what it's trying to get at, is to just simply keep everything limited to text or maybe one of the official social media things.
And I get it with the asking or requiring, it's the permitting part.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also flagging under that because I was reading what the definition was of social media. Because someone asked the question earlier, what about Front Porch Forum? Is that social media? Because schools do want to communicate with students and families in an efficient way. How do they do that?
A lot of them have their websites, right, that they are constantly updating with
I
schedules.
think there's, from the conversation we were having.
It's just a detail
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
sure we
yeah,
work
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud.
But I think that
Me too.
what we heard from the Hardwood folks, I think, was that there's sort of like school promotion, Instagram photos of kids, sort of celebrating the school. Official communication, that is no social media.
Right.
And I,
But.
So just to double check, because that's the point I think, same question. From the legal perspective, the interpretation of number 2, they're permitting students' use of social media for each of those things. So does that say Colchester High School has a athletics Instagram account that students, well, I think it's only administrators who can post to that, but is that considered permitting students' use of social media?
Maybe, I think it actually would ding number 1, utilizing social
Yeah.
media for communication with students directly.
Yeah.
As well.
Right.
I think that's going to be a
Utilizing social media. for
huge
communication with students directly.
impact on the field. If that is the true, I think the reality is that there is just vast amount of social media as a look all the great things that are happening, other ways to reach people, sports teams, clubs, volunteer opportunity, so I think if this is saying you cannot have, I was just watching the CVU RoboHawks, just went to the international competition and the team is posting updates, that you cannot, they cannot do that. I'm not saying necessarily one way or the other, I just think that will have a huge impact on the field as a week. I wanna understand that, and I think we need to dig into that a bit
We'll
because.
build in some definitions, because I mean,
That
this
would
is
be the
utilizing
whole
social
point.
media for communication with students directly.
right.
I mean, I think we all know what
Alright,
we're
but
trying to get at
yes,
here.
but I thought what you just said, Beth, was that would be.
They are
I
communicating.
think it could be.
Directly. So
I
if
think-
that is it, then that's a very,
I think this bill in front of you is as introduced,
yeah,
Right.
and you should consider it a blank canvas.
right, yeah.
And I think you are highlighting some policy choices that you all may be contemplating, and also some ambiguity in the language of the bill.
It might be a good exercise for us to collect bills and laws that have passed elsewhere in the country.
I have done that for you.
Oh. Terrific.
Check. Nice. Do you want me to try and find it now?
That would be actually be great.
Sure.
Casey, go ahead and do that.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, Josh.
Oh, Josh,
Stand
thanks.
up.
Josh, go ahead.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So it's my understanding that when it comes to the social media piece, that the schools cannot, and I'll break all three parts down to one, compel students or make a space that students have to be on. So like the team, if Williamstown or Payne Mountain Sports has a sport, like a Facebook page that promotes when Blue Devils win a basketball game, the students aren't to be like included as members. Like they can view, they can do all of those things, but they're not to be like using that space or using the school social media space. Right? We're not supposed to enable them to use social media, right? If the school separates from that. Now, if they go choose to start their own page amongst friends and have those conversations, that's a private act versus a school, I'll say, sanctioned or endorsed activity. Whereas like Front Porch Forum, again, is almost like a newspaper, because once you post on Front Porch Forum, you can email and communicate with the party, but there's no real social media back and forth on the site. So I think it's just trying to say the schools can't compel students or give them a place where they should go to communicate with the school, with one another through social media. Should they choose to do it on their own, that's their choice. And I believe Angela had mentioned that, and when she first presented presented it to us back in the beginning of the session.
Agreed. I think the idea here is to not require students to participate in social media as a way to have direct communication from the school, with the coach or teacher. That sort of
So
thing.
Josh just threw a word out there that triggered me to look back at this line 2 or line 5 again on page 7. And maybe it could be, and I've already thrown out possible changes, but asking, requiring, or endorsing students' use of social media instead of permitting, because they would have no control over permitting a student from starting their own group. So
Right, yeah, we have to
possible.
tweak that to make sure it's clear. I mean, we can also put in things like, this is not meant to prohibit the, school's use of social media to promote school activities and all that. Yeah.
I have a couple updates for you all.
All right.
One, the definition of electronic device was taken from S-284 as introduced last year.
Okay.
And the definition of social media was taken from a definition of social media platform from a piece of federal law. And then I have also found, I will send this to Annie. a non-exhaustive list of school cell phone laws in other states. And you can see that I put this together back at the very beginning of February, and I have not looked at it since. So I have no idea if any of this has changed. And anything in blue is a hyperlink to whatever it's referring to. So Alabama, California, Indiana, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Minnesota, Ohio, and South Carolina all have some sort of law, whether it's a rule or a statute, on use of electronic devices. They're going to vary as to their content. Pennsylvania has a law that provides grant money for cell phone lockable bags for school districts with policies, so an incentive. Virginia has issued an executive order regarding cell phones in schools. And then their Department of Education, the order was for their Department of Education to draft guidance, and then I linked to the guidance. And then Connecticut, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Washington have all issued guidance from one of their top education governing bodies. So either the State Board of Education or their Department of Education. And again, these are all hot links to all of these policies.
Did you say New York was on that? I didn't see New York. Seems like New York is on.
I don't have New York here. It could be, remember, I put
No,
my
it's
nice
in-
little disclaimer up there, not exhaustive, but I'll look into that.
They're in process.
Yeah, and so this does not include anything that's in process. This is just
Pass.
Well,
things that have passed law. The Education Commission of the states has, you can look at different policy initiatives, like a map of the United States and who's done what. And I believe they have a cell phone law
Great.
map. So that would be another resource for you all to dive into. But I would look into New York.
So as we think about H54 as a blank canvas, as has been suggested, I guess there's, the simple way to sort of address this is just require us to require every school to come up with a policy without being highly prescriptive. Which, you could say every school has to buy pouches and lock them up. But I'm not sure that would be, I think, an unfunded mandate that we may not want to impose. Schools are handling it. Those schools that have them are handling it in different ways. I think like Thetford kids, when they came in, they did not have yonder pouches, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
They have locking.
I think you heard people
Thetford
talking
locking
about
pouches?
manila envelopes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they had a
Yeah.
very low tech.
I thought
Yes.
Thetford had the locking bags.
Harwood has a
Harwood.
locking
who it
bag.
was?
Maybe Thetford did as well. Anyway,
Some schools.
Someone had talked to us.
Like,
They have their like wooden cubbies, right?
yeah, wooden cubbies
Yes,
with
what I-
plexiglass
Yeah.
front, yeah.
Hazen, they don't have, actually, they do now have a mandate, but they got like just the shoe hangers that have little like bags.
Oh,
yeah. And then every teacher just has one on their wall.
And do they do it in every class and pick them back up again?
They give kids the choice. So this is what's really frustrating to me and why I actually like this is they give kids the choice and then kids often say, I'm not putting that there, or I don't have a phone, even though you know that they do. And then they just go to the bathroom a lot.
Yeah.
yeah. So. Josh, is that a legacy hand or do you have a question or comment?
No, it's a new hand. I keep trying to
great.
put it down in between. So two parts, or two things. First is on the devices. Like back to Leanne's question about, how we use things like CD players, DVD players, music players, etc. in the classroom sometimes to teach. I believe this is basically saying that they can't bring their own devices in, right? So it doesn't mean the school can't have some of these devices and use them within school, or if they're if they need them for an IP or any of those measures. It's to say that the student can't bring their own personal or electronic devices into the school or use them into whatever the rule is ends up being. I don't think it limits the school from using the technology to appropriately teach. And then on the second part, escapes me for a second. Oh, the from Yonder bags to manila envelopes. I believe there was a really good, forget what, I could probably find it and send it. It was some news segment that highlighted a school out west that they use basically like legal boxes and manila envelopes. And the staff just basically stood there when they came in and they took it and put it in the appropriate envelope, put it in the appropriate legal box. And when the kids left, they got it back. And it was a fairly insignificant cost. So there are definitely many ways to address it that don't necessarily cost $10,000 or even $1,000. And it was a fairly large school, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I doubt we're plowing new ground here. I'm sure there's examples around the country of how this can be done. Okay, go ahead, Leah.
Just in response to Rep. Dobravich's comment that it's the teachers can still bring in those things. Like, I understand that part, but I still feel like this definition is super draconian. Like, I mean, theoretically, you're even banning like cameras that use batteries instead of just the SLRs. And like, it isn't, I know that it's not our intention to make it so that artsy kids can't have cameras around the school, or I just feel like we're setting up a lot of investigations that might need to happen, or punishments that are really not deserved, or like bending of the rules, which makes everything fall apart. That's the one place where I feel like this is really weak.
All right, so we'll have to, I think that our free time as we have available today, tomorrow, and maybe what we'll do is we could ask ECS to just sort of present to us what other states are doing. But we can also just read it, it's all there. We got great links. But we really could look at how other states are handling that question. And I sort of like the idea of like, no cell phones, but also no, CD players, no. And
Do kids still have CD?
No, they have
No.
some have been.
Nobody has CD
Leanne
players.
said
Old
CD
people.
players, like she first brought
I
this up.
first said Walkman, actually. That was really good.
That was going way
I
back.
mean,
Yeah.
I would say at my school, when I was teaching, the electronic device was their Game Boys and handheld
Yeah.
games, and we didn't let them bring anything like that to school, so they weren't playing within at recess time.
Yeah. Emily?
I just sort of want to go back to the higher level for 1 second and comment, this isn't a question, but it's more of a comment about what the intent here is and what we've been hearing about. We have taken testimony, and that is consistency. Policy is great, and asking all schools to have a policy, I think, is the appropriate method. Consistency within those policies across the state would be incredibly helpful,
Yes.
I think. And that is what I would like to strive for. The other thing I just want to mention, so we'll have to work on the language within this bill to try to get that consistent. The other thing I just want to talk about for one, we don't have to talk about, but I want to make sure that we are clear about, and that is the bell-to-bell request.
Yes.
Because that part seems really important to me. I think, asking students to go to their social media account to decide whether their practice time has changed, that can be dealt with in other ways. We don't need to use social media to contact our kids about school events. So there's all sorts of other things we need to look at, but are we going to say that schools, that cell phones and other personal electronic devices should not be used during the school day? And I think we need to decide whether we're gonna go there or not. And I'm comfortable with going there.
I think the
having that
goal
conversation.
is to, not just say cell phones, but also, wristwatches.
Well, that's why I said other personal,
Right.
I mean, it does say cell phone and personal electronic device use.
Right. You can still bring a record player.
Yeah, the bell-to-bell piece. And I get why it's there, but again, details. Needs to have them on the bus still, going and coming, doing stuff. If I'm a kid that's in practice, I'm on the sports team and I'm gonna be in the gym from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. If I got my device back at 3 o'clock when I left homeroom, does the coach need to hold the, I mean, there's some details of it that just need to be sorted out.
Yeah, I think as folks have told us when they testified, that it's not the answer to the social media ill that is, you know,
Yeah, it's
an epidemic across the country, but that it
Distraction
that it
in the
at least
classroom.
provides a block of time where students are not focused on their problems and they're focused on each other and their learning instead. Yes, so, you know, coaches are gonna have to police their teams.
Which is ironically the one place that students are so good about following themselves.
Exactly, yes.
That's
It's
right.
amazing what. Authentic people
All right, well, and
learn people do.
I guess what I would also say is, to advocates who may be listening to us today, who are deep in this, if there are examples out there that they feel are particularly good ones, please feel free to email the committee.
Examples of laws out there.
Phone-free school policies, yeah.
I just want to make sure there's a way to protect our art students, you know, with their cameras and who need to listen to music during the day because they're trying to learn a practice piece or like.
Yes, yes.
I think there are many
The
hidden
edge-
little ways we're not
right.
thinking
But-
about that kids.
I always get a little frustrated though, when, things like that are expected of a student's family to have available to that
Right.
student as
Hmm,
opposed to
good
the
point.
school providing it.
Right.
Right, so I was thinking about that too. A personal device doesn't count as like the school issued Chromebook that we give you. You
No,
can have
no.
that all
Right.
day. Right,
Correct.
So I think
okay.
that's sort of the answer to all of this.
Yeah,
that Kids
right.
have their Chromebooks, they can
Okay.
email
If,
as needed.
actually, our kids are.
Right, and in that case, then you have access to your music, or you could take pictures of that, although those are really bad cameras, but.
Well, and there
Music.
are tons of secure, different kinds of communication that can be loaded on these school devices to protect the network, but also give the students an opportunity to, I mean, you can download something like WhatsApp that can be controlled by the school. That is a secure way of communication. They can limit who has it. And there's a way for a kid to communicate with their boss during the day should their boss give them a new schedule at 2:00 and they need to know that they got to run there right after school. So there is different ways to use school technology to still communicate, have different ways of communication with kids to do the things that they're used to using their phones for, or need to use their phones for.
You know, I think one of the other questions we'll have to answer is, you know, Harwood said we don't use any communication app. We just communicate via email and text, and telephone.
Right.
Other places use Parent Square. Is that social media or is that an app for direct communication?
Right.
And do we want to say that that's permissible?
Yeah, it's amazing
Well, I
too.
think that's what we've got to understand this definitions clearly, because if we're throwing
Do.
Parent Square, Sports U, all these things up in the air,
Mhm.
we are putting draconian changes on schools and operations of things that I don't think is the intention. So I want to be really careful that we're like, oh, it might be, if that's what it is, if that's what we're
Mhm.
doing. If schools have set up channels for communication and leaned into technology, because this is the world we live in, and it's not requiring students to do it, it's not have students have to get information during the day. Presumably that is not impacted here, but we have to be, if it is, I think the reception to this bill will shift dramatically. I'm looking at Jay. Dramatically.
Yeah.
So our definitions are going to have to be very careful, carefully crafted.
Agreed.
I think we also need to make sure that written into that definition, we're allowing for the use of like educational blogs. Like I've assigned final reading, and there's Young Writers Project where kids are posting content and commenting on each other's content, and these are really valuable learning
That's gonna be a-
tools.
All can be done through a Chromebook though, right?
It can be done through a Chromebook, but it's the social media, the definition of social media that I think it's going to theoretically fall in there. And I don't think anyone's gonna want to eliminate Young Writers Project or like a teacher being able to use final reading. That's not what I'm worried about, but just that we have it in the language so that we're,
Definitions be important.
yeah.
All right, well, why don't we